right, 2026 Iowa State Fair here at the Iowa Corn booth. It is Iowa Corn Day, and we are with ICGA President Mark Mueller. So thanks for taking the time to visit with us on this very important day.
My pleasure. I left my farm in Waverly, Iowa to come on down here and have a nice day relaxing under beautiful blue skies and to promote the gospel of corn wherever I go.
There you go. So I got to ask, how are things looking in your neck of the woods crops-wise?
Okay, I said I'm from Waverly, Iowa, Bremer County. That's in northeast Iowa, north of Waterloo. And I'd say that we are the garden spot of the state of Iowa and of the whole corn belt.
Okay.
I have traveled literally from here to DC, and I've talked to farmers from here to the Nebraska and South Dakota borders, and things are either too wet as you go east or too dry as you go west.
Yeah, it's been one of those things where we were getting results from the crop tour, and they were saying that that eastern part of Iowa, that northeastern section, was going to be probably the spot they were looking for the best numbers in. So that is good. So talk to us a little bit about what is going on here at Iowa Corn Day and what kind of message you're getting out to all these people that are visiting.
Well, first and foremost, we'd like to promote E15, year-round E15. We'd like to get that passed, get it through the Senate Ag Committee, and then the Senate, and then get it to the President's desk for signing. That would be the biggest single thing that could help farmers across the country to boost a market for ethanol. But I would also say then that we are looking at new uses for corn. Corn is already on 4,000 different ingredient list in a grocery store, but you can make so many other things out of corn. It's used in clothing, in fabric, in shoes, in Crocs, in chemicals. In fact, I'd say the future growth for corn is in ethanol that's used as a feedstock for other chemicals. Acetic acid, acrylic acid. Anything you can make out of oil, you can make out of corn, but you need to be able to do it cheaper than oil. Now, if you're a consumer that's concerned about using renewable products, biorenewable products, you would get something with the corn label on it because we can make drinking bottles or, all sorts of things besides fuel.
Okay. And of course, when the fuel process happens, there's still stuff left over, the DDGs that are left over. It can help be a great source of animal feed and things like that. So it's not like you're just extracting the oil and the rest goes to waste.
Right. People used to say it's food versus fuel, which was never correct. But it turns out that it's food and fuel and fiber and feed. But in food and fuel, you use about a bushel of corn weighs a little over 50 pounds, 56 pounds, I think. You take 17 of those pounds to make ethanol. You still have a whole lot of that bushel of corn left that is, it turns out it's DDGs, dried distillers grains. When ethanol was first being made 40 plus years ago, DDGs were a waste product. They didn't know what to do with it. They sometimes hauled it to a landfill. And then somebody figured out, hey, this makes a great livestock feed. Right? So when we make that 2.5 to almost 3 gallons of ethanol out of a bushel of corn, we're still left with about 40 plus pounds of good concentrated livestock feed, which it turns out is also one of the fastest growing global exports. As the world is getting a larger middle class, we are finding more people want to eat meat in other countries. And to help boost livestock meat production, DDGs are the perfect feed for that. You can transport it around the world, and the gains in livestock they're enough that the geographic center of cattle production in the United States is slowly moving back towards the Corn Belt because of the presence of DDGs.
Well, that's always good. And I know you brought up the term that food versus fuel. And I think that's something we still see that argument made a lot when we talk about ethanol. The people who aren't connected to agriculture keep thinking we're taking away from the food source for human consumption. And that's not how the case works at all. And I guess, for those who are watching that maybe have that thought or not sure how it works, maybe give a quick 30,000 foot view of the differences so people aren't sitting there thinking we're taking food away from hungry people.
Okay. We are producing more corn than we know what to do with. In fact, let's see, I'm not sure how many billion bushels of corn we produce. I think 15 to 20 billion bushels of corn produced. We still have 2 billion bushels left over when we've used up all the food or all the feed and the food and the fuel and the fiber. We're growing more corn than we can use now. We have corn sitting in piles that are going unused. So it's not like we're short of corn. And every year we're growing another 1% to 2% more. In fact, for about 100 years, the the production of corn has been creeping upwards about 1 to 2% a year pretty reliably. So I'm going to grow more corn this year than I did last year, and I'm going to grow more corn next year than I will have this year. We're not running out of corn. We're looking for places to get rid of it because corn is a bioproduct that is sustainable. It's grown more efficiently in this country than anywhere else in the world. We have multiple uses for it. We're not running out of corn. That's what it comes down to. We got more corn than we know what to do with. We as Americans don't eat enough. We don't drive enough to use up all the corn we have. So we're looking for new markets for it overseas. And since growing corn is what Iowans do best and the Corn Belt does best over other parts of the world, let them do the things that are less economically efficient here. We grow corn better than anyone else in the world, and that's why we're the Corn Belt.
All right. He also brought up the E15, and going back on that, I had heard from both Senators Ernst and Grassley. They think now after this August recess, they're hoping now they'll have enough votes and they've done enough work that maybe they can get the Senate bill across. Ernst has told me that if they can get it out of the Ag Committee, they figured they'll be able to get it across the Senate floor. Of course, then it goes to conference. Talk with G.T. Thompson when he was here on Saturday. He said he knows that E15 was separate from the Farm Bill in the House, where it's together in the Senate, but he said he's not going to give up until E15 year-round is done in a conference committee.
We have a lot of champions in the congressional delegation, and especially in the Iowa delegation. I want to salute and call out Randy Feenstra for the work he did in getting it through the House. And he paid a price. He wasn't able to be back here campaigning for governor because he was doing the people's work, the farmers' work in D.C. So a big thank you to you, Randy Feenstra. But yes, we need to get that through. Now, whether it happens before or after the election, I can't say. Maybe it happens in a lame duck session of Congress. I do know that there is bipartisan support for it from corn state senators. And of course, you have the House that already passed it. What's going to happen? I'm not paid enough to make that call.
So other than the ethanol and the DDGs, we've been talking about so many issues facing corn. I know one thing we talked about a little bit at Commodity Classic, but has now developed even further and further, is the situation with the fertilizer companies. We had the Attorney General here at our booth yesterday. He was talking about some of the concerns he's got with the fertilizer companies. And what is this meaning? And maybe help people understand where the concern is on this right now.
Okay, I started farming in 1995. And back then there were probably 20 plus companies that were the sources for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the three fertilizers we need to raise corn. And over those years, there's been consolidation after consolidation. Each time, the promise was made that we'll be efficient, we'll pass the savings on to the farmer. That has not happened. We now have 4 companies that control 90% of the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium fertilizers. The 3 ingredients we need to raise more corn than we know what to do with, and many, many other crops. 4 companies control those 3 fertilizers. And if you think they haven't gotten together on the golf course and said, hey, we hear farmers are getting another bailout payment from the government, let's keep our prices up a little bit longer until they get that check. I'm going to get that check from the government, and I don't want it, but I haven't sent them back yet. And that check is going to be in my hands for about 5 minutes, and then my fertilizer dealer is going to say, okay, Mark, it's time for your fertilizer bill. There is market manipulation. There is an investigation going on by the Department of Justice. There's another one put on by the Federal Trade Commission. I was down in Texas here a couple months ago testifying before Andrew Ferguson, the chair of the FTC. I do know that the USDA has heard loud and heard about this from farmers, and I think they're doing an investigation. And we have supported Senator Grassley's Fertilizer Transparency Act, which would authorize the USDA to investigate fertilizer pricing, because it's not responding to market forces. Every time there's an event to raise prices, they go up. When we had COVID, the prices went up. And then they never came back down, or they barely came back down. And then we had the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and they went up some more, and they didn't come back down. And then we have the war with Iran, and they've gone up again, and they haven't come back down. It's like the fertilizer industry will seize on any excuse to be able to jack prices up. and prices shoot up like a rocket and they come floating down like a feather. And they haven't even started floating down yet. So you have 4 companies that need to be investigated. I'd love to have the laws we have on the books enforced, but at the same time, the wheels of justice move slowly, but they are moving.
Okay.
So Iowa Corn Growers Association and multiple other states have been working to spur, either in front of the cameras or behind the cameras, to get investigations going, to bring some transparency to the fertilizer industry.
And another thing we brought up, we talked about those ingredients we need, especially nitrogen. That's one that's getting a lot of attention, obviously. There's concern about the watersheds and stuff like that. Now, one thing I think we can help, we hear that side of it, and we know that things have to be fixed. But the same token is we need to make sure we're talking about the work that farmers are doing to fix the problems. These problems didn't occur overnight. They can't be fixed overnight. But the same token is this is also another prime example of showing people that we're not just going to put things on willy-nilly at the cost they're going for, but talk about what some of these farmers are doing and some of the work you're seeing among members to help offset these issues and help be more responsible for our neighbors downstream.
Okay. Let me first start by saying that nitrates occur naturally in the soil. There's already nitrates there. They're not always available to the corn plant, so we put a little bit extra on. I will say that we grow twice as much corn with the same amount of fertilizer or less, and the same amount of chemicals or less than my father did 50 years ago. He probably was happy to get 100 bushel per acre corn then. Now I better get 200 bushels per acre using no more inputs and probably fewer than my father did. So we're more environmentally sensitive than we used to be. My practices in my farm are that I use cover crops, which help tie up nitrogen and the other fertilizer inputs. As long as there's a living plant there, it'll grab onto that fertilizer and it'll hold it in place until the next crop comes along. So that's cover crops. I am a no-till farmer, and every time you disturb the soil, you lose inputs. The soil loses its organic matter. It doesn't hang on to the inputs as easily. So no-till farming and cover crops are a great way to help keep your nutrients in place. I would also say that on my own farm, I put in a wetlands. Now that wetlands was expensive, and I did it with public money, and I had to give up some of my own land to put that wetlands there. But I used county and state and federal dollars to put in that wetlands, and I am now cleaning up the water that runs off my farm and goes downstream to, in my case, eventually the Cedar River. Farmers are very conscious about our water because we live here. We live amidst where we work. So we want to keep the water and the chemical usage as low as possible. And I will also say, as I mentioned before, it's naturally occurring in the soil. And you also have municipal runoff.
Right.
I think the state of Iowa about, this is a question for Mike Naig, but I think it was about 2013, 2012, that the state of Iowa came up with a nutrient reduction strategy.
Right.
And the EPA in DC pointed to the other states and said, look at what Iowa's doing. They're doing it the right way. Follow their example. Their example is volunteering. Now, I will say that we're moving the needle. We're not moving it enough to suit some people, but as you said, we didn't get into this problem overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. It's one of those things that farmers, though, are constantly aware of, and I see more and more of these conservation practices being adopted.
And that's good to hear. And, when you think about these cost share programs we talk to are set aside because, the faster you guys are able to get some money to help put that in, because it's not cheap, as you said, to do this. Without those cost share programs, you're talking about higher input costs. You're talking about higher fuel prices. You're talking about sometimes markets that are pretty volatile and you're not always getting what you need for it. So you add the cost in of putting in cover crops or wetlands and all that, that would be almost crushing, or would be crushing to a lot of these operations. So having these cost share dollars available is a great way to help offset it, because the sooner you can do that, the sooner you can start getting those results.
If I had to pay for that wetland myself, and it cost almost $300,000, I would not have put it in much as I would like to have. So that's why it's important that we put in as many wetlands as we can. And once again, this is probably a Mike Naig question. There's probably a long waiting list of people, farmers lined up to get wetlands put on. And they are making the process more efficient, more cost effective, batch building, doing a whole bunch of them. And I mentioned a wetland, but there's other practices as well. I've got grass waterways that help slow down the water. I don't have a buffers. Yeah, I do have buffer strips.
Okay.
Yeah. There's other practices as well, and farmers are adapting those. It's once again, people would like us to just snap our fingers and problem solved, but
And you guys would too.
oh hell yes,
Yes.
because we live there, and farmers are probably the first people that see a problem, and they're the first ones that line up to fix it. I mean, if I see something that's broken, and it's not even my own, I have to restrain myself from going to fix it. I will say that there's people that advocate for regulation. Regulation does have a place, but regulation can also slow things down. If I had to get a permit to adopt a new practice, I can see that permit process tying up years, before somebody finally gives me the okay. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
And much as I'd love for there to be, the nutrient reduction strategy that Iowa came up with has about 24 different practices.
Right.
Half of them that help phosphorus, half of them take care of nitrates. So there's not a one single thing that works. Every farm operation, every soil type is different. Whether it's the prairie pothole region in north central Iowa or my area, which is closer to the rolling areas in northeast Iowa, what practice works in one area doesn't work in the other. And regulations, I found, tend to promote one single solution, which might look good to somebody sitting at a desk in a government office, but in real life, it's the farmer who knows his land the best.
All right. So as we wrap up here today, Mark, what is one thing you wish that the urban friends who are here at the fair, that if they could walk away with something that they can learn new or understand better about corn producers, what would that be?
We are allies to be enlisted and not enemies to be demonized.
Okay.
I would also say, if you have time to add this political pitch on your broadcast, contact your legislators, whether you're in Iowa or outside, especially your senators, and have them get year-round E15 passed, because there's nothing that'll help farmer profitability more than getting year-round E15 passed through the U.S. government. Our president has said he'd sign it. We need to get it to his desk. That would be the single biggest thing that would help my bottom line this year. And I got to tell you, farmers need a win.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us, and enjoy Iowa Corn Day.
I will do so. Thank you.